and welcome to the podcast that is less Kvicha Kvaratskhelia and more Kevin Davis. It's the big one up top.
It certainly is. That was a mouthy one, wasn't it, Joe?
It's hard. I don't know if I nailed that pronunciation or not.
I'll go with yes.
I feel like those two players are quite similarly linked. They've got like K's and V's in their names, so I thought, it's the end of the season. We're running out of ideas for the intro, so...
There was a lot of chat about PSG and their young team, and one of the things that I saw was that that player, say that again...
Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, or affectionately known as Kvaradonna by the Napoli fans.
I love it. Well, apparently on FIFA 19, the video game, his name was spelt appallingly wrong when he was playing for Lokomotiv Moscow. And so, everyone was saying, look how far he's come. FIFA spelt his name wrong a few years ago. Now he's winning the Champions League. So, good times. What are we going to talk about today, Joe?
Well, we're going to talk about the Champions League final.
I think so, yes. And we're going to touch on this idea of having normal conversations about faith, because I think that's kind of what we're trying to do on this podcast, isn't it? We're trying to talk about football, but also we're trying to just have a chat about faith and what our faith means to us and how we can keep that fairly normal.
Yeah, we're trying to be normal, aren't we?
We're trying, and, sometimes not succeeding.
Yeah, trying our best.
Speaking of trying our best, should we do some trivia, Joe?
I think we should.
Yes. So, this is Bible Ballers. It is Guess the Player with a Difference. So, I'm going to be quizzing Joe this week, and I'm going to give him some clues. He's got to guess the player, but the player also shares their first name with a book of the Bible. So, are we ready, Joe?
Just before we start, I feel you were kind of hard done by last week, weren't you?
What we mean with Song of Solomon Kaloo?
Yeah, I mean, slightly sketchy.
Yeah, but it's fine. Producer Anthony's looking very sheepish in the corner of the room, but it's part of the fun of the game, isn't it, Joe?
What it is, yeah.
It's all fine. Now I think so. I've no dirty tactics in this one, but I think this is hard.
Okay, go on.
So, are you ready?
Yeah.
Which English midfielder who has won the Champions League despite not playing a single minute in the Champions League that season, went on to establish himself as an ever-present for Middlesbrough, West Brom and Nottingham Forest later in his career?
Champions League, so not European Cup, UEFA Champions League.
UEFA Champions League.
Okay, so that's 1993 onwards.
Yeah, I'm not giving you
Well, I want to put it past
Eusebio from Benfica's.
No, sure. A player that springs to mind that has won the Champions League but not played much was Ryan Bertrand in 2012. But there isn't a book of Ryan, and I don't remember him playing for any of those clubs. Yeah. So probably played for West Brom. He feels quite West Brommy, doesn't he?
Feels very West Brommy, yeah.
I'm going to need some time with this,
You
Ed.
can have some time. You can have the rest of the episode to think it through.
Thanks so much.
Okay, Joe, let's start with the Champions League final. I mean, the ref blew the whistle at bang on 90 minutes, didn't he?
You love to see that, don't you? He was I've seen enough. We've all seen enough.
Well, exactly. He was putting Inter Milan out of their misery. Bang on 90 minutes. PSG 5. Let's say that again. PSG 5.
Brackets 5.
Inter Milan 0. The first song I heard as soon as the final whistle went was Free From Desire.
Very good. It's always Freed from Desire, isn't it?
Yeah.
Regardless of where you are, that is the first song.
Maybe instead of Desire, it should be Desiree.
Sure.
As in Desiree Doué.
You're delighted with that, aren't you?
Yeah, I am.
Did you start with that just so you can...
I had that in my head from this morning, and I've definitely tried to shoehorn that in.
You've done really... We watched this together, didn't we?
We did, yes. We had a little watch party. I went round to Joe's house.
How did you find the hosting experience?
Oh, it was lovely. I went there. Joe's wife asked if I'd eaten. It turns out I hadn't, and so Joe and his wife tried to feed me food for the rest of the evening.
Well, we don't want you to go hungry, Ed.
I took 2 bourbons and a cup of tea.
And you can't say more than that, can you? What a good time. This was an absolute demolition, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, you've got to say, it is up there with the greatest finals of all time in terms of a performance by one team at a final.
I think it's the biggest win in a Champions League final.
Absolutely stunning. Let's start with PSG. Let's look at the PSG side of this equation. Absolute dominance, wasn't it, Joe?
Yeah, just a really good team performance, and I think as good off the ball as they were on the ball. I think every goal was brilliant. Really good build-up play. I think their third goal was my favourite. Played out from the back. There was that little flick from Dembele into Vitinha, who played it through to Doué. And just really good on the eye. Really dynamic forwards. great passing. I think off the ball is where they won it. I think they just had so much energy. The press was really good. Just a really good all-round team performance.
Because sometimes when you see these teams that are full of flashy players, is you can often go, yeah, but do they work hard? But they absolutely did. The press was bang on. They were just constantly tracking back and making tackles and getting in there. They just looked really hungry for it.
Yeah, they were really up for it. There's a video going around of Dembele almost like staring down Jan Sommer every time he had a goal kick. It was like really intimidatingly just, he's there. He's ready to run at you. And I think they just owned it from the first minute. Remember the first, from the kickoff, they just played it into touch?
Yeah, like, it was very strange.
Oh, what's going on here?
Yeah, so there was just, I don't know who took the kickoff, but it was one PSG player, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Who just booted it into touch like you would at the start of a rugby game. It was very, very, very
clearly
odd.
A mind game, though. Clearly that was to actually gain touch and then press them.
Give them the ball and then press them,
And I think it worked really well. I think we should talk about Desiree Doué.
Yeah, let's talk about some players that really impacted the game. Let's start with Doué.
He's kind of been a rising star of this season. They signed him at the start of the year. He's kind of gone under the radar, I feel. I feel like Lamine Yamal is kind of spoken as the next teenage like superstar.
Prodigy, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But Doué is just as good, I think. He's really good on the ball, really good finish for that third goal. He's had a great season. He played really well against Liverpool when we watched him. And I think he kind of epitomises this new PSG that we see.
Plays like he enjoys the game, though, doesn't he? Just with a real joy and free spirit, which is lovely.
That's kind of the whole PSG team. I loved that fifth goal as well. Seni Mayulu, the youngster that came on, he scored that fifth goal. Great finish.
He just absolutely put his foot through it, didn't he?
Yeah.
It was great.
And he just, like those classic World Cup goals where they don't know how to celebrate, so they just run. That's exactly what he did.
Yeah, just running around with a massive grin, eyes wide open, and
I can't believe what's just happened. I'm just going to run. And every player in that PSG team kind of played like that. They were just so good as a unit.
Let's talk about Vitinha. I thought he was really useful, wasn't he? Just ran the show in the middle, didn't he?
Yeah, really did. Let's not forget, this is Vitinha who played for Wolves a few seasons ago and was really quite terrible.
Yeah.
Like, didn't fit in at all. The thing that's going around is the fact that he's gone from an FA Cup game against Chorley, where he had an absolute shocker, to winning the Champions League for PSG. But he's been so good all season at the base of this midfield. That midfield of Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz is really solid for PSG and kind of run the game.
And I think just across the board, Hakimi was another one who had a great game. Just all across the team, they just played just with real abandon, like they had absolutely nothing to lose. And, we'll touch on the fact that they're a younger team, and actually that's contributed to a real sense of good-natured support towards PSG, haven't they?
Yeah, and I think actually this is the first time I can remember for a while where a team has played so well every round, deserves to win the Champions League. Obviously, we've had years where Real Madrid have won it, but you think back a few seasons ago where they were kind of didn't play well, but kind of ground out results and found a way to win. That's not been the case for PSG. They've dominated every team they've played. They had that one game against Villa where they seemed to be a bit intimidated by the atmosphere, but they got through that. And you have to say they deserve to win the Champions League over the whole tournament.
Let's touch on Inter Milan. Joe, was this very much PSG being brilliant or Inter Milan being terrible, do we think?
It's very much a bit of both, isn't it?
Yes, I think so.
They were just a bit shell-shocked by the whole thing. I think they had a point to prove after the final 2 years ago. I think they've had a really good campaign. They've only been behind for 17 minutes this whole Champions League campaign. And they've played really well.
I thought they looked tired. I don't want to make a joke about them being old because, they're all still professional athletes, but they just looked exhausted. And I think given the ending to the season they've had, maybe that's not surprising. It's just dropped off a bit, hasn't it, at the end? It's
been a terrible couple of weeks. They lost the league on the final day. And I feel for DiMarco as well, the left-back. He had a really bad game.
Yeah.
Brought off just after half-time. And he was the classic, every time a goal scores, you pan to him, either when he's on the pitch or on the bench. He was the dejected looking.
Like all of them were his fault, even the ones he wasn't there.
Exactly, yeah. But they just didn't look up for it. Like you say, they looked tired. and they were just outrun by PSG.
There's also been some rumours about Inzaghi as well, which probably won't have helped.
Yeah, it's fair to say the Italian media have really stuck into Inter since this final, saying that Inter have brought shame to Italian football, which I think is a bit strong.
feels a bit hard. I mean, look, they didn't play well, but
they didn't at all. But even before the final, there was rumours coming out that Inzaghi had agreed a deal to become Al Hilal's new manager, one of those Saudi Arabian clubs, Ed. Which we'll come on to that a bit later, shall we?
Well, the question is how should we feel about this win, Joe? Because there's always been this sort of owned by an oil state about them,
Sure.
kind of like Man City or Newcastle and all that sort of stuff. So they've got that going on, but there's actually some really lovely stories at play with this PSG side. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Like you say, there's so many layers to this story.
It's very complicated, isn't it?
There's a lot of things at play here. But yeah, you're right. Let's start with Luis Enrique.
Yeah.
This is a really great moment for him. He's only the second manager to win the treble with two different clubs, the first being Pep Guardiola. But more importantly, he tragically lost his daughter in 2019 when she was just 9 years old to a very rare bone cancer condition. Obviously, tragic story, really sad. He did an interview about this during the season about how that has impacted him, how he feels like she is with him spiritually, and how that's kind of the driving force behind what he's doing now. He's doing this for her. So for him to win this Champions League, although that's never going to make up for what he went through, this is a really special moment for him.
There was a lovely moment at the final whistle, wasn't there? There was this lovely image by the fans for the big Tifo banner behind of his daughter in a PSG kit holding a PSG flag. And also he wore a shirt after the final whistle, a T-shirt with a sort of a cartoon drawing of him and his daughter on it, which was, it was really lovely because it just showed you, again, the human side of these. He's an elite manager. He's one of the best in the game. And yet he's thinking about this awful thing that he's had to go through and how that's affected him. And I just thought it was a really lovely touch, and it made you really glad that he won it, as awful as that sounds.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think a lot of people were really happy for him, kind of like geeing him on to do this for that reason alone. He wore that T-shirt. We were desperate to see what was on it because he put it on, and then he was so happy about the occasion he was running around.
And the cameras couldn't get a front view
trying
of him.
to take a look at this T-shirt. And eventually we saw it, and you're right, it's this picture of her planting the flag in Berlin when they won it in Barcelona, and kind of representing what they're doing now with this victory. So I think for that reason, you can be really happy for Luis Enrique.
And also, the whole PSG team now is much more likeable than it was a few years ago, because previously it was full of the stars. It was Messi, it was Neymar, it was all of the rest. And there was a bit of, they're kind of just buying the Champions League, and it didn't really work. And now with Luis Enrique, they've gone for this team of youngsters. Yes, they've still spent money. Let's not pretend they've done this on a shoestring, but they've bought young talent, and they've brought about a team that is greater than the sum of its parts, and that's making them a lot more likeable, isn't it?
I think so. I think you're right to say that they have spent money. I don't think this is a money thing. I think if you look at the stats, since 2011, they've invested over 2 billion euros into this team. But I think it's a bit more of a humility thing.
Yeah.
I think there's something about this group of players that they're kind of playing for each other. There's no real stars.
They have gone for players that we think will play the part in the team, very similar to Newcastle. It's Newcastle could have gone out and spent crazy money on Haaland or something, but they haven't. They've gone for a good, solid manager who knows the value of building a team, and that's what's happened here.
I think you can compare PSG's fan base a little bit to Newcastle. Obviously, PSG have been winning the league year on year on year, but this Champions League trophy they've been wanting since 2011. Probably longer than that, to be honest, but that's when this new ownership came in a similar way that Newcastle have had this wait for a trophy for years and got it this season. So I think there is room to be really happy for those fan bases that they have been through thick and thin with these teams. They have finally got their trophy. They can celebrate. It's not their fault that the ownership of their teams are questionable. But I think it is really important to talk about that ownership.
Well, I was going to say, is this a victory for sports washing, Joe?
I think it probably is. This is sports washing at its peak.
Yeah,
right?
It's working.
I think this is the biggest win for sports washing so far in club football.
Yeah.
And the Qatari World Cup was also a big win for it. But PSG, owned by the Qatari Sports Investment since 2011, Qatar obviously have quite a questionable human rights record.
Yeah.
Homosexuality is illegal there. There were deaths in the lead up to the World Cup in Qatar. And this whole sports washing thing is to kind of distract us from that, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've spoken about that on the podcast, a couple of times this season, especially when looking at Saudi Arabia and things like that. But yeah, it is really hard to divorce those two things. You want your team to do well, you're happy for this team to succeed, but you do have to question its very existence if, any success is going to be tarnished with that brush, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think the most important thing is that we just keep talking about it, whether that's on here, whether that's just in everyday conversations about football. Like, don't bring it up every time because that would get annoying. But maybe you should. But I think it's just important to have that space that we can hold this intention of, I'm really happy for this team, but I'm also casting a critical eye on the ownership and what's going on there.
I think it's also really important to mention the unrest that we've seen in Paris and actually the wider France as well, since we've seen 2 people die and hundreds been arrested across whole of France. Flares, fireworks have been set off, but we've seen bus shelters smashed, we've seen cars torched. France's Interior Ministry said that 192 people had been injured in the clashes in the early hours of Sunday morning. 559 people arrested, including 491 in Paris alone. 22 police officers and 7 firefighters were injured. 264 vehicles were set on fire, and it's heartbreaking, isn't it? Like, how can this be happening on what should just be a day, a night of celebration? How can this be possibly happening? And obviously the majority of fans will have celebrated in a responsible way, or even slightly irresponsible way, but not this.
I just can't comprehend that this is your response to start looting shops, start setting vehicles on fire. Let's be praying for those that are injured.
Absolutely. It very much feels like one of those things where this isn't the real fans. This is actually people who are looking to go out and be violent. We need to just obviously roundly condemn it and pray for the situation. Let's talk about some transfer rumours.
It's that time of the season.
I know. I really don't want to because it feels...
Why not? It's great.
It feels wrong. But there's 2 players I want to bring up. We obviously know Trent is going to Madrid.
Yeah.
But there's also been a lot of conversation about Cristiano Ronaldo, and the 2 have been linked, haven't they, Joe? Tell us a bit about this.
The 2 are very much connected, Ed. I don't want to get my conspiracy theory hat on, but if you'll indulge me for just a second.
Go for it.
Obviously, we have the Club World Cup coming up. Obviously, we're both very excited for that.
Are we?
No, not really.
Okay.
But there's kind of been this mini transfer window created between the 1st of June and the 10th of June to allow any club, not just Club World Cup teams, but any club to make transfers in that period.
Yeah, very strange that, isn't it?
The strange part about it is that Ronaldo seems to be touted to leave Al Nassr and to join another Saudi Arabian club.
Is this more than Infantino? Because Infantino was quoted, wasn't he, recently saying that, maybe Ronaldo might move. He might move to a club playing. Who knows? And you just think, what are you doing? You can't be saying that.
Essentially, it feels like it's all been orchestrated to get Ronaldo to the Club World Cup. They've already done this with Lionel Messi by saying, your team can come along. You've not qualified or anything.
Join the party.
Just come along. So there's a lot of sketchy rumours going on. Trent Alexander-Arnold has moved early to Real Madrid for £10 million, which, as a Liverpool fan, you've got £10 million for a player to leave you a month early after the season's finished. And they're also covering the wages every day in June and July.
Bizarre. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of other rumours for us to touch on before next season. I also think it's worth us mentioning Ange at this point, because as we record on the Monday, he is still the Tottenham Hotspur manager. And I feel very, very uncomfortable about this because I watched Sky Sports News for a good half an hour the other day, and they were discussing at length who his replacement is going to be. And I just thought, he's still got a job. Aside from whether you think he should still be Spurs manager or not, he's still there now. Let's not talk about him like he's actually gone. What is going on?
Well, it seems a bit disrespectful, doesn't it?
Very disrespectful.
To be doing that. I do think news channels like that have to find things to talk about, don't they?
Yeah, it doesn't feel right to me that we're even having these conversations about who's going to replace Ange when he is still there. And for the record, I actually think that they should give him another year.
Yeah.
I think he's a good manager. He's had a bad season. I think another year and he'll get that club back on track.
I think I agree with you. I want to see how he does in the Champions League. I think he's clearly quite a good cup manager. He steered Tottenham Hotspur to
well done
a Europa League win.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you. I want to see him another season.
Quick mention for Oldham Athletic, Joe.
Yes, Oldham Athletic are back in the Football League.
That's lovely. A team that was in the original Premier League as well.
It's nice to see. They won 3-2 after extra time. 3 goals in extra time, Ed.
Yeah,
you don't see that often, do you?
It's drama at the highest level.
But yeah, nice to see Oldham Athletic come back to League 2.
So, Joe, this is the last official episode of The Big Man Up Top before we have a summer break. Are you sad?
I am sad, Ed, but I can't wait to hear the unofficial episodes.
Well, exactly. We are going to be doing a lot of cool stuff over the summer, which we'll cool.
Very cool.
Which we'll talk about later. But our regular weekly catch-ups about the football we're not going to be doing until next season. And I think it was a moment where at the end of the season I thought, let's take stock of what we've done, as a podcast. I think it's been a success.
I'm just amazed we've made it this far.
I was going to say, the fact that nobody's canned this yet.
Do they know we're doing this? Do the bosses know that we've been talking about football every week?
I'm not quite sure. But either way, we're still here and we're planning next season, so make sure you stick around. But I thought we'd have a look particularly at this idea of talking about faith like a normal person, because to be honest, that was one of the key aims for us. Was we wanted to talk about football, but also we wanted to bring faith into the conversation quite naturally, and I think we sort of sometimes succeed at that.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe not all the time,
We've only shoehorned it in a few times.
Yeah. But this just got me thinking about how we can talk about our faith normally. And I had a really, really great chat with Rachael Heffer from the Evangelical Alliance. This is after we spoke to Phil Knox from the EA a few weeks ago. And Rachael and all the guys at EA are just fantastic at giving you resources to share your faith. And so we had a chat about what it means to basically use football as a way to share your faith. I am delighted to be joined by Rachael Heffer from the Evangelical Alliance. It's great to have you on the Big Man Up Top, Rachael. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. It's great to be with you, Ed.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on. Let's start with football. Football's a big part of your life, isn't it?
It is. I would like to say delightfully so, sometimes reluctantly so, but yes, absolutely. I am married to my husband, Darren, who is an Arsenal season ticket holder, and have 2 teenage boys who are 14 and 16 and are football crazy. So yes, over the last 20 plus years, football has certainly played a very significant part in my life.
Just talk a little bit about your role at the Evangelical Alliance.
So I've been working with the Evangelical Alliance over the last 7 years. My role is head of mission. We love to work partnering with mission organisations, mission agencies. But the heart of what we do is, as our strapline says, we work in unity with others. The strapline is together making Jesus known. So a big part of my role is to serve the church, our member churches, member organisations and individual members in all aspects of mission and evangelism. I meet with church leaders week in, week out across the UK, which is a real privilege to just see and hear and discern what God is doing and what God is saying to the church at this time. And again, with our One People Commission team, working to look at how we can be intercultural as a church and serve the communities and the diversity of our communities where we are as well. So there's a real big, widespread range of my role. But at my heart, I guess what I do is lean into the local church and really try and cheer on, resource, champion, pray for, and more than anything, encourage leaders and encourage individual Christians to have confidence in sharing Jesus and making him known. Because we see a huge openness at this time for people wanting to know the gospel.
How do you think football can play a role in evangelism? We've touched on it on the podcast before, as actually there's a great opportunity here, isn't there, for football fans and people in the game?
Absolutely. Whether it's going on to football in the Premier League level or whatever national scale, but actually even more than that, stood pitch side week in, week out. I personally must admit I'd become really fiercely passionate about mission through sport for exactly the reason it had amazing opportunity just for myself and for many, many, thousands of other parents or players, there every week. You're stood there, aren't you? Often watching the pitch, you might be, cheering them on or heckling at the ref, dare I say. But actually, you're stood there side by side with these other adults or teenagers week in, week out. And actually, I think, what a golden opportunity. I can't even start to tell you the many conversations that I've had that have spoken of just the stuff of life, whether it's been anxiety or grief, loss of a parent. With one friend I was speaking to even a couple of months ago. And as you're sort of facing the pitch and not necessarily eyeball to eyeball, but the conversations that come out really make you realise that to be there both prayerful and intentional, actually it can be a real opportunity, I think, to be stood with others and just spending so much time together. So why wouldn't we use it as an opportunity to just share something of God's love?
I'm not a Catholic, so I don't practice this, but there is something of the confessional booth almost, isn't there? Because when you're in a stadium, you sat next to somebody, you're not looking at them, but in a way you are in your own world, just there, surrounded by many people, but there is the opportunity to just sort of lean in and have those conversations, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And we hear it all the time, don't we, that particularly for men, actually, as women, we'll often go out for coffee or a hot chocolate, whatever, and sit eyeball to eyeball, won't we, and put the world to rights and so on. And that's all well and good. And some men love to do that as well. But we often hear, don't we, that for men, it's often that side-by-side nature of watching football, playing golf, walking together, doing something, that actually that's where conversations more easily maybe come about. But let's not underestimate, actually, that even where sometimes conversation, may be dominated by football, actually, I think as practicing Christians, as people that love those around us, love our mates, those in the stands, those in our families, our friendship groups, let's not underestimate that people are really searching at this point in time for hope and life and truth and purpose. And whether we're young or whether we're old, whether we're in the stands or stood on a muddy football pitch, whether we're cheering on or whether we're a player or a ref or a coach ourselves, what recent research tells us, and particularly the Talking Jesus research, which we did a number of years ago as part of the EA, but a part of a 6-way partnership, do you know what? It just tells us that people are so open, in so much as even 1 in 3 people across the UK told us through that research that where they've had even an opener conversation with somebody about something to do with their faith life or belief, 1 in 3 people said that they were really open and wanting and willing to find out more. So it should really encourage us as Christians to not actually hold back, but to just be prayerful and see where the opportunities open up.
What else is the research that you guys are doing showing us about the nature of what people are looking for, but also maybe what tips we can have about how to share our faith with others?
Well, there's loads in the Talking Jesus report, all free to have a look at on talkingjesus.org. But some of the aspects which I love and I just think are so helpful for us to take note of as Christians. For example, when we ask people, if you know a practicing Christian, what is it that you think of them? Or so often as Christians, we think that it's going to be negative, don't we? The media has told us that for a long time. But thankfully, as the survey says, when people think of a practicing Christian that they know, and that could be your mate in the sun that you go to football with every week, could be a fellow parent like for me on the side of the football pitch. But when people think of us as Christians, the top 4 answers are that they think we're friendly, we're caring, we're good-humoured, and we're generous. Those are really good places to start, aren't they? Also goes on to say that they think we're hopeful, we're peaceful, and we're authentic. All of those things kind of smash our preconceptions almost, don't they, as Christians, to think what other people would think of us. They may have some hesitation against the church, which also comes out in the research. They think the church can be narrow-minded, can be hypocritical. However, I think the church can be really friendly and, again, hopeful. But when they think of you or me, when they think of that person that they might travel to Arsenal with every week or stand on a football pitch, pitch side every week, actually they think really well of us. The second thing I'd throw into the mix is, as part of the Talking Jesus research, we asked, if people, non-Christians this is, if they'd had a conversation with a Christian that they know, what was it that they remembered about that dialogue? And we found that from the research, 33% of the UK said that they remembered, first of all, being asked about their life, their faith journey, what had been going on with them. Then they remembered that that person they were chatting to, the Christian, went on to share something of their own life and faith journey. Isn't that interesting, Ed? I mean, to me, that just speaks to the fact of it's a dialogue, it's a relationship, it's about doing life in the raw, in the everyday. It's not necessarily about seizing our moment and having to tell them the whole gospel. What this speaks to me about, whether it's we're talking about sport, about football, but also in our wider work lives or family lives, is people appreciate the relationship, that intentionality of us leaning in, being real, being normal, engaging with them.
We're getting to a point now, the football season is ending, but actually the summer is prime time for social events, isn't it? Family barbecues, gatherings with friends. How do you think we can challenge ourselves in terms of having conversations about our faith in a way that is just normal and not weird?
The starting point from my own experience is to just recognise sometimes the baggage that we've put around what faith sharing could or should look like. All too often, I think, as individual Christians, whether we've grown up in Christian families or come to faith slightly in our later adult lives, we know about the Great Commission, we know it's part of our role, but we just don't know where to start. And for me, my personal journey was, we just need to release ourselves from that and think, you don't need to say it all. We don't need to be theologically trained to be able to share a Bible passage that maybe has meant something to us. We just need to, I believe, as you said, be normal, be real, talk to people about the stuff of normal life, the football scores, the holidays, the kids, what's going on, the challenges, but maybe in the midst of that, challenge ourselves to be that little bit bolder and braver to where we sense that opening and a point of pain or a point of excitement or something to celebrate with people, but maybe just be prayerful and intentional to actually use those moments to speak of something maybe that God has done in our life, or a time where we also felt like that and a Bible verse rang really true for us, or we prayed about something and actually God answered it, and just to almost drop those in as little nuggets. Because I find it really helpful to just think, do you know what, it's not about us, is it? Yes, we're called to play our part. Yes, we're called to have a voice and to speak up and share something of God's goodness. But what would it look like, for example, this summer as we go to, like you said, a family barbecue, or we're at the beach with friends, or we're having drinks one evening, sat in a garden, or around a fire pit, whatever that looks like, to actually just pray in advance, God, what would you have me talk about this evening? You know, help me to see when these conversations, and may there be something of the flavour of your good news that just comes through what I or we share in that moment. And you know what? Again, research time again is showing us that people are really open, that they're searching, there's a stirring. I'm hearing it from church leaders all the time, that people are coming into their buildings and seeking out something of the good news of Jesus in ways that they've not been open to before. So as a good friend, Mark Greenwood said, don't say other people's no's for them. And I love that quote. If we hold back and we say other people's no's for them, but why wouldn't we share just a little bit over these summer months to just see what God does with it? So I hope that's helpful. But for me, that's part of that, releasing myself, giving it a go and being a bit bolder, a little bit braver, and trusting the Lord that it's not about what I say, but it's about what he does with it. And who knows that this summer might be transformative for some of those people that we know.
That's absolutely fantastic, Rachel. And just before we go, what can people look out for from the EA over the coming weeks, months, maybe days even?
I'd love to encourage people to get involved with us on a new piece of research, which we've launched literally at the start of June. So this is hot off the press, a study of people who've come to faith in the last 5 years. And we wanted to say why, how, who was involved, what did the journey look like? The research piece is called Finding Jesus, Identifying Pathways to Faith in Adulthood. And I'm glad to say, Ed, what is just absolutely fascinating about this research is to just see and hear from this survey that we did, but some deeper dive dialogues. Again, 32% of people said that what started the journey was because they were searching for meaning, often from a place of pain or looking for hope. We heard that 28% of the UK had come or started the journey towards Jesus because of the spiritual encounter. And our report is littered with stories of what that looked like. And it's just absolutely fascinating to hear how God is in at work. It's hugely encouraging, really challenging, and we hope that it will really serve the UK church and indeed us as individuals over this summertime and beyond. So that is all at findingjesus.co.uk or on our EO website as well. So do check it out.
And you can find those links. They'll be in the show notes as well. So make sure you check that out. Rachel, thank you so much. It's been so great to talk to you, and wonderful research as ever. God bless what you guys are doing, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for having me with you. God bless.
Great chat there with Rachael Heffer from the Evangelical Alliance. Ed, I really loved that kind of last challenge that you guys spoke about. This summer, I've just got pictures of us all at barbecues.
Yeah.
Summer's a great time for social events.
Love it.
In the park, whatever you're doing. And I think we should kind of set a challenge from here. We've finished our regular season of episodes. Why don't we set some sort of challenge for the summer?
Yeah, I think so, because we've heard of the Great Commission. We are commissioned in Scripture to share our faith with others. And sometimes that can feel really, really daunting. And as Rachel said, actually, you don't need to have your theology nailed. You don't need to have your Bible memorized. You don't need to have answers for everything. You just have to really casually and really naturally share what God has done in your life and how that might be able to help somebody else. I think a really great step actually is the people around us is mentioning that you go to church regularly. That was a big thing with my friends, is actually the fact that I just mentioned a few times that I go to church. So all of a sudden they know I'm a Christian, they know I'm a practicing Christian. And so that led to them asking me questions, many months down the line.
Yeah.
But the first step is people need to know that there's something slightly different about you. And so just saying, I was at church on Sunday, and you might get a weird look and you might go, oh, well, but it opens up a conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think we get in our own heads about that. As soon as you say I go to church or I'm a Christian, the whole room's going to fall silent. But actually, I think it's becoming more and more normal to talk about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And football is kind of this great way of having conversations. Like you say, you're not looking at someone when you're talking to them. You're both fixed on this same thing. And you can have conversations while you're watching it, and it's less awkward. It's almost, like when... I don't know if you ever had to do this, Ed, but if you had to have a difficult conversation with an ex after you've had a breakup, you'd go on a walk around the park, wouldn't you? Would you do that?
I'd absolutely no comment, Joe. I cannot give any experience.
Fine. Hypothetically.
Would you not do it face to face, Joe?
No. Go on a walk. Then you can just look at the floor.
Dating advice from Joe Rivers.
No, but you know what I mean? You're not intensely looking at each other. You can kind of have those more, those conversations you're maybe a bit more apprehensive about.
Yeah.
In a more comfortable situation.
I mean, I'm certainly going to be setting myself the challenge this summer. I think you should too, Joe.
Yeah, great.
And I think all of our listeners should. Let's just challenge ourselves in whatever way we feel comfortable, because we'll all have different levels of comfort with this sort of stuff. But maybe try and broach the topic of faith with your friends in some way this summer. And what we'd really, really love to do is to hear from our listeners. Tell us how you managed to pluck up the courage to say something. Maybe it's to share your testimony. Maybe it's just to give somebody some encouragement, whatever it is. Get in touch, send us an email at podcasts@ucb.co.uk.
Or comment on our YouTube.
On our YouTube, yes.
That's a really easy way to get in touch with us. Just drop a comment on the YouTube channel. We'll read them all, and maybe we'll read some out in the new season.
Maybe. Have you had a thought about the quiz question, Joe? That's a no then.
I'm struggling, Ed. I'm struggling.
Oh dear. I think this one is really hard.
Yeah. Can I hear it again, please?
You can, yeah. So, which English midfielder who has won a Champions League winners' medal despite not playing a single minute in the Champions League that season went on to establish himself as an ever-present for Middlesbrough, West Brom and Nottingham Forest later in his career?
Oh, gosh.
So Anthony's got a smile on his face. Anthony,
has he got it?
Do you think you know it? He thinks he might have it. So let's try. I'll try and help you, Joe. So
okay.
So you're thinking maybe somebody who was on a bench for?
I think it was someone on the books at United.
Okay.
And never played.
You mean, what, 99? Or?
Yeah, 99.
Okay.
I feel like that's where you've headed with this.
That's where I've gone for.
Joe, do you want to have a guess? Or?
I'm going to throw out the first name, James, because that's what's come to mind.
It's incorrect.
Okay.
Go on, Anthony.
My guess would be Jonathan Greening.
Jonathan Greening is
Are you
correct.
joking?
I am not joking.
Jonathan.
Jonathan, yeah, John, you know.
Oh, my God.
It's absolutely fine. That's, Jonathan.
You can't end the season on Jonathan
John
Greening.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, he never played in the Champions League in that season for United, but he was on the bench, got himself a winner's medal, and said he felt like a bit of a fraud. Now, listen, that has meant that we have finished the season in terms of Bible Ballers, which I still can't believe we've gone through a whole season and not come up with a better name. So that's obviously just sticking. Obviously, Joe, we know you've won it.
Thank you.
We know you've won it this season. You've been head and shoulders above everybody else who's joined in.
Have we blown the whistle on 90 minutes dead on?
We have blown the whistle, 90 minutes dead on. That is it. End of time. And you have won 16-6.
16-6?
Yes.
That's a demolition, Ed.
Well played.
You got 6 right all season.
I got 6 right all season. But listen, Joe, I'm very, very proud of you. Well done.
Thank you.
I actually have a little trophy. Here it is. I would like to present you with the Bible Ballers trophy.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I know that this has been on your desk for the last 3 years.
It has.
I do not accept this trophy because it's an afterthought.
I didn't know why it was there. It's just been there, and so I'm giving it to you. Well done, Joe.
Thanks, Ed.
How does it feel?
Yeah, really good, thanks.
Good,
yeah, quite underwhelming, actually.
Good. Well done. We're very proud of you.
Thank you so much. Ed, that is it.
That is it. It's it for the season.
The whistle has blown on the final game of the season. We are about to go on some hot weather training, ready for our live shows this summer.
I know, yes. Well, just to let you know what's coming up, make sure you keep tuning in every week. You're going to hear some special one-off episodes with the three of us where we share a bit about our personal stories. You're also going to get to hear some extended interviews that you've not heard throughout the season. We're going to have a bit of a season review next week, which is quite exciting, a bit of a best of. But also, you're going to hear some live episodes. That's right, as we mentioned last week.
And it's live.
The Big Man Up Top is going to be at the Gathering in June, but we are also going to be at the National Christian Football Festival in July, and we are absolutely delighted. So make sure you go and check that out. There'll be information in the show notes there. Come and see us. Come and say hi if you're a listener. But that's it for our regular episodes. We'll see you next season.
We will do. Thank you so much for listening once again to the Big Man Up Top. Thank you for listening all season. If you've just joined, please feel free to go back to the start and listen again. If you want to get in touch with the show, please ping us an email to podcast@ucb.co.uk. Drop us a comment on YouTube, follow, subscribe, give us some great reviews if you wouldn't mind. This would help us get the word out, and also, if you've enjoyed it, tell your mates. Huge thank you to our producer Anthony for all his hard work all season behind the scenes.
We are so very grateful.
He's had to put up with some absolute nonsense.
Mainly from me.
And there will be a slightly different episode next Tuesday. See you then, Ed.
See you later. Have a good summer, Joe.
You too.